Hello, all you positive heads out there. It's so good to be back with all you beautiful reflections of the one source consciousness that creates and animates all things. If you're new to this podcast, of course, we are super happy to have you here, and we just ask that you bring an open mind and heart to your listening experience and to be prepared to explore vantage points that I'm convinced will help shift or solidify your current understanding of the ultimate nature of reality in a way that is extremely empowering. Speaking of exploring powerful perspectives, I'm super excited to announce that on January 5th, I'm going to be freely gifting each of you my very first book, The Golden Key: Modern Alchemy to Unlock Infinite Abundance. In the book, which was initially shown to me in a dream and has been followed by a next level amount of synchronicity, by the way, I share the keys to manifesting abundance that I've personally discovered over 20 plus years of trial, error, and deep exploration of these perspectives, as well as one golden key that ultimately ties them all together. Also, I would like to invite you to participate in a unique abundance manifestation experiment with me and the other readers that is outlined in detail at the end of the book and at the book's website, goldenkey.gift, where readers will also share the inspiring results of their abundance manifestation experiments. So if you're wanting 2021 to be the year that you alchemize the circumstances in your life so that your abundance expands to an entirely new level, head over to goldenkey.gift to sign up to accept my golden gift right when it comes out on January 5th. All right, all you positive heads. On this week's Soul Share episode, I'm very excited to have Doug Akin here with me on the show. Doug is an adventurer, soul guide, and earth keeper who is passionate about serving and supporting people on their own life's journeys and adventures. Super happy to have you here. Hello, Doug. Welcome, my friend.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, this is gonna be good. I've been looking forward to this ever since our mutual friend Mark Shapiro, who was on not too long ago. He's been on a few times actually, and ever since he connected us, and yeah, just talking to you here prior to turning on the microphone. This is gonna be a good one, guys. Doug's got some profound wisdom to share, and I want to start before we dive too deep into all that. I'd like to start with the same opening question I always like to ask, my cliche question. Well, I actually have two. You get one at the end too. So yeah, don't be too sad that it's over. So you're in an elevator. The woman next to you looks over, says, "What's your passion?" You got 10 floors to answer. What do you say?
10 floors, to light up the world with positivity, to connect people to their true essence, their true spirit, make the world a more vibrant place, connect people to nature, and show the miracle and mystery of that, and create more harmony amongst all beings. And
yeah, I've been using that word a lot, harmony, around here because you're here actually at the Mystic Manor. We're getting to do this in person. And one of the words that I've been using a lot here is harmony, because you have, 10-ish people at any given time, sometimes more with friends and people, obviously it's been a lot less with COVID, with, sort of the gatherings and things, and even retreats that we were doing previously that we hope to get back to in 2021. But yeah, it's just, that's really the key word. How do you create harmony with especially now, so many energies and forces that are just bombarding us from all angles, from, the scary things happening in the world to, in our case here, like, oh, this person has a different, wants to produce music when I'm going to bed at, midnight or whatever. So I think harmony is a great thing to strive for. And yeah, and one of the things that jumped out with you is, I know you were big on the idea of alchemizing experiences and using alchemy, everyday alchemy. And of course, that's been something that's been so prevalent in my own life here. I've been just deep diving into that idea and concept with the forthcoming book, The Golden Key, which is subtitled Modern Alchemy to Unlock Infinite Abundance. By the way, guys, you can register to get it for free at goldenkey.gift. It's coming out on January 5th. But I'd love, Doug, for you to talk a little bit about, everyday alchemy and what that means to you.
Great. Well, I was going to actually give a little cue on the subject of harmony, and we can flow into everyday alchemy, which is one and the same.
Yep.
One, I think, is perspective. Life is a game of perspective. So how are we perceiving the situations, right? If somebody does want to play music late at night, is that not beautiful? Right? Are we judging it?
Right.
And then, there is a saying I love from A Course in Miracles, which is everything is either an act of love or a cry for love.
Yeah.
So, an act of love would be like, hey, would you like tea? I'd love to bring you tea. And a cry for, oh, I can't believe Brandon's playing music, right? And maybe there's something within us that is not feeling acknowledged or that other people are appreciating us for who we are.
Right.
So we feel this need to kind of bitch and moan.
Yeah.
And so that is right, like this mastery of, how do we perceive life? And with everyday alchemy, how can we turn kind of these mundane or challenging situations into the gold?
Yeah.
If life is an inside job, how can we mine for gold within us? And with what we're seeing on the outside is a reflection of what's happening on the inside, right?
Yeah.
So, like even actually today I'm feeling super lit up. Yesterday I was actually feeling a little low. I came back from a really beautiful nature trip in Joshua Tree. And, I was actually on social media a lot, and it was kind of like, I started realizing I'm like comparing myself to other people. And it's just like, one
that
of
is the
obvious things, right? Comparison is the thief of joy, but we all do it and don't even realize what is sucking my energy. I'm literally giving my power away to all these other things, and I don't even realize it. And I was walking on the street and I started just appreciating these squirrels playing.
Yeah.
And I'm like, wow, focus, find something to appreciate, just to tune your energy, to shift your energy out of this sad state or depressed state or down state or comparative state, and just shift it and say, what can I appreciate in this moment? And I literally was like, boom, and I was out of it.
You know what I love about that? What I always use when it's like something else comes out of left field to distract you? Squirrel.
Yeah.
You squirreled yourself.
Yeah.
That's good. Good.
I like that.
So I got so excited to jump right in with you. I think it might be the first time ever on one of these soul shares, I forgot to be really predictable and say, okay, I heard your elevator pitch. Why don't you start off by sharing a little bit about your journey and who you are and how you got here? And
phenomenal. Great. Well, I was born in the vibrant, bright city of New York.
Ooh.
Right on Central Park. Well, I wasn't born on Central Park, but I grew up. I spent my teen years, in Central Park in Manhattan, and I was really into graffiti and thought that was cool. It was, in the 90s hip hop era. And then I started gathering people just kind of innately, doing a couple parties in high school for senior year, and I was good at it. I've always had a really nice way of connecting with everyone, from the homeless people to the doormen to my parents' friends and whomever. And I think that's something at a soul level that I probably came in with as an inborn gift.
Sure.
But I didn't know it at the time. Took years later to really kind of wind back the clock.
Not everyone's like this. Yeah.
And then, I realized I probably should start figuring out how to make some money. I didn't want to ask my dad always for money.
Yeah.
And so I started throwing more of these parties, and I went to college, and a friend of mine had said, hey, why don't these parties suck in Boston? Why don't you know how to throw some parties in New York, from New York? And, we started doing that, and it kind of took off and started making a lot of money, and realizing that, wow, it wasn't even a term entrepreneur at the time. This was in 99, 2000. Right. So, you're in the same age bracket as me. And so we were just doing stuff and bringing people together, and there was a reciprocity that people were paying, and we were receiving, some income from that.
Sure.
And when I graduated college, I started kind of realizing, well, my friends aren't going to go to nightclubs forever. And I kind of looked at the people in the nightclub industry, and they weren't so inspiring to me.
Right.
At 40.
That's my future.
At 40, I was like, I don't know if I want to do that. Yeah. So I reached out to a friend who was also in the nightclub business, who was doing more marketing. And he was actually, in the moment, starting an agency with another guy. And he said, well, just join and let's just figure it out. And so the three of us started it, and I was literally like 23 living with my parents, and I was working, in the room that I grew up in, and cold calling and trying to sell people on $5,000-$10,000 deals, and and just hustling. And I was super passionate and wanted to be successful, and made that a focus and a priority. And every year, we grow the clients, the accounts would grow, and our staff would grow, and we kind of hit a niche, and we were doing a lot of youth marketing, experiential based marketing for big brands. And then we got into social media very early. Actually, one of the founders of Facebook called us in like 2006, was like, hey, do you want to like sell ads for us? And we're like, what is social media? What is Facebook? I was actually tried to sell some ads to Dunkin' Donuts, and they couldn't even understand what it was. It was like way ahead of its time. But what I learned from it was, to make bets, to place bets on things, and to say, like, we didn't know. Everybody said social media is a fad. Like every big agency had said, no.
Wow, that's crazy to think about.
TV and print and radio, because they didn't want to lose their money in those industries, and they were so attached to the way things had been. Yeah, they couldn't see the future. Yeah, and so we just put some chips down and said, hey, I didn't know, but I said, I think this is the future, and I was willing to take that chance. And so boom, and then our agency just caught fire, and we had 125 people, and we were doing large agency of record work for Chase and Microsoft and Pepsi and so forth. And I had a goal. I wanted to be a millionaire by 30. About 30, hit that goal. I was super excited. Thought, well, what's next? Is this just like life is just creating more and more financial goals? And when I got to the top, I don't know if you experienced this, like I was meeting with all these big corporate CMOs and CEOs, and I thought, this is it. Like I thought, like I don't know. I just thought it would be like this holy grail.
That's when I started the podcast. I was like, I can't do this.
I was like, wait, this is like high school. This seems just like an ego game. So at that moment, and I started, a lot of friends, I got into Summit Series. That was really influential and inspirational at the time. In about 2009, I spoke, and other people were talking about finding their purpose and having a purpose. Whoa.
Besides just making money?
I've never thought about that. What is my purpose? So, that sent me down a rabbit hole. Yeah. But I started realizing that I wanted to be more social, work with businesses that wanted to change the world and do more good in the world. And I wanted to discover that within myself. Like, what am I really here to do? Yeah. And I was 33 and I didn't have that answer. So I felt this calling to travel the world and find that. And I literally quit. Walked away from, a lot of status, influence, money. I owned a restaurant as well at the time. I was kind of juggling two things. I had this like really shishi celebrity restaurant. And I'm like, I don't want any of this stuff. Yeah. I just want to literally, I remember I was like on Lonely Planet, and I was like, I want to backpack the world for 6 to 8 months. How many pairs of underwear and socks is a good amount to bring? And like, so I was kind of living in these like dual worlds, right? Like where one, I had this like, I was like being asked to go out and pitch these like $1 million accounts, and I could do that. I could be a good actor, but it was kind of sucking my soul. Yeah. And so I traded all that in, bought a backpack, filled it up with some gear. And
How many pairs of socks did you bring?
I don't know, like 3 or 4. And I went and I bought a one-way ticket to India. I thought I'd find enlightenment in India. And I wound up traveling for 8.5 months, went to 18 countries. My brother, I have a twin brother, he came and joined me for a few months in Southeast Asia. I visited a school we built, through Pencils of Promise. I started doing more charity work within my organization that people like lit up about. That was like literally culturally creating so much heart and resonance because people felt it was real, And then I just wanted to learn from indigenous cultures. And I remember Googling tribes in Africa. I was like, I want to go, I'm close to Ethiopia. I wonder if there are tribes there. It just shows like kind of, I had like so little knowledge, but I trusted it and I Googled it, found there were tribes in Ethiopia, met a tour guide, boom, I'm in Addis. I took a midnight flight, show up, super green, backpack. No, I didn't even have a hotel booked. Wow. I was sitting next to a priest. He's like, who's in all white? He's like, where are you sleeping today? I'm like, I don't know. Wow. He's like, dude, you can't just like show up in Addis Ababa. It's like really dangerous, like in midnight without nowhere to like stay. And so he's like, I'll bring you to a hotel. And then that sparked this 5-month adventure in Africa, which like really, really like spoke to my soul in many ways. Yeah.
That's an incredible journey, man.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
So what would you say, I mean, if you had to, and this is probably
Sure.
a tough question to answer, but 5 months in Africa, that was the most transformational part of your traveling, it sounds like. What would you say was your biggest like aha or takeaway from that journey? Yeah,
that's a great question. I think life is what you make of it. I started realizing like in Ethiopia, the first chapter was that I realized that, people believe that like scarring was a form of like beauty. Like the more scars you had, the more beautiful you were. So it started really like shifting, like coming from this like hardcore New Yorker who was like all about like money and status and, New York's the center of the world. And, this is the way things are. Right. And to right, like you have a job and you have a title and right, like that has value to being like, wait a minute, does it? And there's this other society that's saying that something in our society that's considered ugly is not only beautiful, it is the most beautiful thing. And so that really was like a head spin. And I started realizing, wow. And people were just like so open and generous and they didn't know me. It wasn't about like,
he's the guy with the restaurant. We can get a free appetizer.
I was so attached to my identity being what I did, not who I was at a spirit level. And I needed to have that moment of just allowing my spirit to be free and to be seen and to be appreciated. Yeah. And without anything that was like super transactional.
Yeah. You, as my friend puts it, you had sort of hit the goal line and now you're focused on the soul line. Right?
Yeah, I like that. Yeah. And it's, it's always like that, right? Like I believe that we're always where we need to be in life, right? Like you look at Goenka from, Vipassana. He grew up, wealthy to see that there was misery within the wealth, class. Yeah. And so we have to have these experiences to make us more relatable. So I'm so grateful, like that my spirit chose to be incarnated, incarnation, incarnate is the word for flesh in Spanish. So to come into flesh form, our soul and our spirit have to embody a physical flesh form in New York in a high stakes go environment. So I could relate to people that are in these high stakes go environments. Yeah. And use this alchemy, use this medicine and the knowing, I spent the last decade traveling and exploring and searching and really trying out all of these tools to say with myself and others to be like, what is real? What is true? What is the deep knowing? And so that's how I can, share those nuggets and wisdom. Yeah, I so relate to you. Our paths are somewhat similar. I mean, starting out first real jobs on the phone, selling things that are $5,000-$10,000, then starting my own company from me to 100+ people, and then, turning and saying, okay, like now I'm supposed to, they're telling me I've got to wear a suit to sit across from this guy. And I just want to go to Burning Man. Like what? I just want to wear I just couldn't quite fit in fully. And that's about the time when I started like, okay, I need another outlet. And so I definitely relate. And I think the chips fall where we are. I love this expression from Winnie the Pooh, like wherever you go, there you are. Yes. So you go to Burning Man, but yet you could still feel insecure at Burning Man. You could even feel more insecure at Burning Man than you do, because now you have this big expectation of having this amazing experience, right? So, it's an interesting thing where people think, well, if I move or if I, switch jobs, and then you realize, wait, I'm still miserable and I switch jobs, but why am I still miserable? Well, that's where you have to take the internal inventory. Yeah, absolutely. Wow. So where to go from here? What is, I like to throw this one out sometimes. What is the thing that is most alive and exciting for you now? Yeah, I mean, I'm super inspired by nature as a teacher. Like historically, academia was taught in nature. Socrates, Aristotle, Plato, all these people taught nature, Fibonacci sequences, and the mysticism and the mystery within nature. And I think it's just a great tool for seeing life and creation, and also abundance. Like you could literally, like I just staying with a friend and he has an orange tree and it's just bursting with life. it's like one tree is containing hundreds of fruits, and then within each fruit contains dozens of seeds. Yeah. So nature is so giving, and yet we live in this world, not all of us, but the modern world, which is like, this is mine, and that and hoarding and accumulation and materialism. And then what happens? Like, do your possessions possess you ultimately?
Right.
And, you know, is there freedom within that, right? I'm not saying that, I'm not judging it. Someone could feel very alive and actualized, but you look at other cultures, like in Peruvian cultures, they live in the jungle, and to them, it's a burden to own material things, because material things erode, they decay, they don't preserve their value, right? Like, you know, you buy a car, it just starts losing value. So it's a pain in the ass. Yeah. So it's just interesting how we give our power to kind of this church of modernity. And I like nature because I think it's part of, you know, the original design, and we can learn a lot from it.
Sure.
And, you know, people feel good in nature. And I think it's closer to our original origin point.
Yeah. I think all the answers are there in some way, shape, or form.
And it's so giving, right? Yeah. Like if you put your energy, you know, there will be enough to go around. You know, and I love sharing, and I love cooking for people, and I love just sharing, you know, what grows. We're in California. It's so abundant. Yeah. It's so rich with life. And so that's very exciting.
Yeah. Well, you know, what so many people do and have been trained to do is like this lack of abundance mentality and cutting themselves off. So, okay, I've got this little nest egg. I better hoard it because otherwise there's not going to be more. And they approach that not only with monetary things, but relationships or in general. And once you start to realize, like, in the right context, you know, when to allow it to flow, like money, currency, to allow it to flow, it's literally how you give it back to yourself. You're always doing it to yourself. If the conditions, the intention is right, and it's obviously not in a way you're being taken advantage of or whatever, do it, because that actually, every time, I've seen it so many times, because I do consider myself pretty adept at noticing the patterns and the synchronicities, and everyone on the, you know that listens to the shows knows how much I just am like a child with that excitement, seeing and connecting the dots. And you know, it's interesting because every time I've seen where it's like, okay, I can do this thing that feels a little scary to, I'm going to let go of this chunk of money, to use that example again, or allow this thing to go. I love this jacket or sweater, but my friend here is wearing it and they look so good in it, and they keep hinting at, boy, I sure would love to have this. And then you let it go. And then, you know, I remember doing that not so long ago. And then all of a sudden the next day, with the jacket example, and I let this thing go, and I loved, you know, and it felt right. All the check marks were there for me energetically. Okay, Brandon, let it go. The next day, someone gifted me this custom jacket that they gave to me, right? Yeah. And it's like, once you start noticing these patterns, did
you really need the jacket?
No, right,
you know,
right.
There's a great piece from the BBC, the Adam Curtis series called The Century of Self, and he talks about how in the pre-industrial, you know, post-industrial revolution, we went from a needs-based society to a wants-based society. So, you know, what do you really need? Yeah, if you don't have a jacket and it's freezing, and you can't figure out how to, you know, alchemize your body to produce enough heat, you need a physical layer. But if you have one or two jackets, then it's just a want thing, right?
Yep, right.
And I look at life through frequency, and it sounds like you do as well. Energy and frequency. What are we emitting and emoting at an energetic level? And what is the universe then showing us back as a mirror? And that's something where I think it's very important for us all to be in constant communication with and take stock of. Like, you see something in someone else, well, it appears in you, right? Because it's a clue. It's like, hey, what's up with you?
Yeah.
Don't look at them to discover something that needs to realign with you. And with money particularly, it's a frequency. There's a great book I love called Busting Loose from the Money Game. Have you ever heard of it?
I haven't.
And he talks about all these different experiments that he would do. Like, he looks at his credit card bill, and you know, my dad, I remember, he used to always like look at his credit card bill and be like, I can't figure out how to get it lower. I'd be like, well, like, just start, like, spend, don't, you know, don't, if you don't, and so the book, the guy looks at his credit card bill, and he's just like, in a state of appreciation and gratitude.
Ooh.
He's just literally like,
Ooh, I bet who out there looks at their credit card bill and starts feeling gratitude.
Yeah, and it's like, look at all the things I got to appreciate.
Yeah.
And look, if you don't appreciate them, then you can be like, you know what? I spent like $200 at this restaurant, and to be honest, I didn't really appreciate it. So I don't have to go the next time, right? But ultimately, the things that we're consuming are ultimately should be things we appreciate. And if we don't, then we need to
reassess.
Look at them.
Yeah.
And so, with money at this frequency level, it's like we can look at it and say, where am I in this scarcity state, right? Where like, it's like, I don't want to give up because I'm afraid it's going to come back in. Well, that's a belief system that needs to be relooked at, right? Where, well, do you believe that if you're lit up and following your passion and communicating your passion to others and discovering what others would find value in and want, then will money not come in?
Yeah,
right. And so this hoarding or this like, I don't want to let it go, that's right, like this energetic belief system that needs to be reattuned.
Right. Yeah, it's so true. And one of the things that I really find interesting these days, somewhat related to touch on something you said a few minutes ago, is when someone is having an issue with me or I'm having an issue with them, this idea of I'm not what you say I am, you're what you say I am. I mean, that is really, when you talk about the feedback, it like gets really like, I'll find myself reacting or sort of in a heightened or even agitated state or not appreciating what someone is doing. And now, I think years in the past, I would think that would happen. It would be like, here's where you're off, here's where you're wrong. And it's like, okay, hold on. This thing is happening. Yes, I can say they're doing X, Y, or Z, but why am I so tweaked by that? How is that reflecting some part of myself back to me? And it gets really interesting. And then you see people who are unconsciously literally giving it to someone else about the exact same thing that they're even doing in that moment. It gets like so funny to like start to
and what's at the source?
Yeah.
Do you feel underappreciated in the moment? Right? Like what's actually happening at an emotional level?
Right.
That, likely you probably feel underappreciated or undervalued or, that you are having an experience feeling taken advantage of or manipulated or whatever it is, right? And that's something that I think what's interesting, like at our educational system, that we don't actually take the time around emotional intelligence to understand like what are we actually feeling and what are we projecting. And I think anger and fear and all these things can easily be addressed at a younger age with people really understanding like who they are at a soul level. We all have emotions. The range of emotions is been the way it's been since the start of humanity. So it's nothing new, and everybody has the same emotion. So we're more similar than we are different, and yet we don't have the learning at an early age of how to actually manage that.
Yeah.
And that's something that could be taught in school.
Yeah. Can you imagine if a lot of these ideas and perspectives are given to someone? I mean, I sort of did that. I mean, well, I did do that with my own son, but and I'd like to take all the credit, but I probably can't or shouldn't. He's turned out to be just such an incredible, young man now, and he's just, so inspiring and thoughtful and kind. And, I just think of teaching these things, I look forward to the day where that is like what the foundation of our education system is based on.
Yeah, and I think also community, like what does it mean to be communal? And historically, tribes and cultures gathered, in a communal way, typically around agriculture, which actually created a form of culture. And, that's even where the word cult comes from, to cultivate. So it actually had a good meaning in the beginning, same thing with weird. It meant like connected to the divine. Yeah. So it's like there's this alchemy, right, with like all these words and everything. Like our words have, or use your word as your wand, see where's the energy, can you reframe it, right? Instead of saying like, oh, it's like a burden, can it be a blessing? And can we, rename things, right? Like I was saying with my friend, he has like a court date, and I was like, what if it's a clarity date? Like could we, and that feels lighter, it's like, right, like a moment of clarity. So yeah, I mean, but tribes gathered in a communal sense, and people recognize a soul. And a soul was part of a tribe, and the role of a tribe in many tribes was to guide that soul. And there was a specific design that was, in African culture I really love, in Burkina Faso, the Dagara, tribe of mystery and concealment and mysticism, they would have the grandfather, who was the elder, guide the spirit and the soul. And they even were communication with that soul coming into being.
Wow.
And named it.
Wow.
And it's like, there's an author named Malidoma Somé, of Spirit and Water, has some great stuff if anyone wants to listen to it. And, the father is still believed to be going through the ego stage. So the grandfather is closest to re-entering the spirit world so they can guide that soul on the path. And what I'm getting at is saying, at a communal level, like, can we say, I see you, I acknowledge you, I hear you, I know you're upset, you stole, you did a bad deed, but like the larger community. And now we live in a very individual-based society, right? Where it's like, this is my family, I close my door, it's our problems, but then there's suffering and misery that goes on. My parents lived in this really wealthy building with some of the wealthiest people in New York City, and I would come back from my travels and I'd be like, hi, how are you? Beautiful day out. And people wouldn't even would hardly respond. I thought, wow, there is so much wealth here and yet so much pain.
Yeah.
And hiding. And, what is it all? But we live in this world of deitizing wealth.
Yeah.
But for what?
Yeah.
The pain even can be grander, because then you make all this money and all this wealth, but you feel alone.
Yeah.
So what is it for? And then as a society, we give our power away to this deitization of materialism, only to then realize that, like you said, you go and you make it, and then you're like, fuck, is this it?
Right. Uh-oh.
Yeah. Wait, I still feel like shit.
Right. Yeah. The rich, I've heard it said the rich person is just miserable in a nicer part of town.
Yeah, or even that's a good one. Even looking at like our political system, our president-elects or our leaders are mirrors and reflections of where we are at a societal level. What are we valuing? What are we giving value to? And I think certain things like gratitude, honesty, truth, we can rise those as values in society rather than, you're wealthy but you're an asshole, right? Or you're wealthy but you treat women poorly.
Yeah.
We have to do better. And I think it's for us, we're the new generation and our kids are the new generation. So we have to do better than we can honor our ancestors and what they went through, but we don't have to replicate things that haven't worked.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's one of the biggest issues is these ideas that have been passed down from people who just, I look back and I think, being aware of a lot of the stuff that we talk about on the show and these concepts and the ultimate nature of reality and, understanding that it's all happening for me and not to me and all those sorts of concepts and like how much they empower me. And yet life still has, its fair share of challenges and things. And I think back to, our ancestors and who never even introduced us a lot of the concepts that we talk about so freely, like it's our reality, and they're like, oh, I just did it this way. I did this thing that was taught to me by my parents and then by their parents and on and on and on. And it is just fascinating that we have treated a lot of that like, oh no, this is just the way it is. It's just wisdom. And now all of a sudden we get to be part of a generation where there's just this mass, coming out of the slumber, awakening happening. And it's just, I guess everything in its season, but it's just fascinating that it went on as long as it did. It's like, I'd love to interview all my ancestors and be like, you didn't see more beyond, you know what I mean?
That's cool, yeah.
That would be a pretty cool show, right? Okay, I'm going to channel my ancestor. Okay, grandfather did this show, and keep going back.
Well, yeah, I think if you look at the design of humans, when did, I was mentioning this book, Anastasia, that I read, they talk about originally, we had the source information. We were connected to nature at the most divine levels, that cosmically, energetically, that at a frequency level that we could telepathically commute with everything, the trees, the earth. And you look at indigenous cultures in Peru and they say, well, the plants speak to us and they guide us and they tell us what to do. And they tell us what plants offer healing. And right now, look, we're in a pandemic and it's like No one knows what plant. We've lost that connection because why? We've cut down all the plants to be able to build buildings.
Right.
And so,
right.
we've lost that connection and we're seeking it. Not all people, but I believe there is a group of people that are seeking that. And it's like, well, what if we just look at all the brutality of slavery, of the Spanish Inquisition that came in and said, no, our ideology is more valuable than yours.
Yeah.
So we no longer value what you have to offer because we want to own, we want to keep, we want to amass wealth. And then what? People become fat. They become, filled with possessions. There's conflict,
completely disconnected,
and and then we have an ability to restore these native values, these teachings, and I think that's what's happening.
Yeah,
slowly, and we're new. Look at the internet; it's 20 years old in terms of.
Crazy to think about.
It's like in a way we have to give ourselves some credit because blocks of time can be dynasties and blocks of consciousness. Typically, we're in 500-year periods in Incan and Mayan periods. So we're at a very early stage. People talked about, remember, 2012, the end of the world, but it was a awakening of consciousness. So if we believe that, or if we even feel like that sounds like something good to build on, then we're 8 years in, right? We're babies.
Yep. And yeah, and that's assuming that the calendar. I saw something recently. It's like, oh, actually, the Mayans were 8 years off, so we're right on time for the oh, okay, whatever. Who knows? But 8 years are brand new. It's all pretty new in the scheme of time and how it plays out in the universe and on this planet and all these things. Before we continue on with today's episode, I'd like to take a quick moment to tell you about our new sponsor, New Calm. As you all know, mindfulness and meditation are key components to being the best version of ourselves. However, I would say sleep is even more important because if we aren't well rested, our bodies can't repair themselves properly and we can't perform optimally or think as clearly. So when I first heard that the New Calm system has been clinically proven in over 1 million sessions to improve sleep and reduce stress without using drugs or side effects, I was excited to get it for my brother to give it a try because he has been having issues with his sleep for many years. The New Calm system is great because it uses cutting-edge neuroscience and consists of 3 non-invasive and non-pharmaceutical items, all of which are included in a monthly subscription that costs less than a daily cup of Starbucks, which will probably only keep you up at night anyway. So if you'd like to feel better rested and less stressed, head over to positivenewcalm.com, where Positive Head listeners will get 50% off a 30-day subscription of New Calm, which also comes with a money-back guarantee. That's positivenucalm, all one word, .com. Check it out. Yeah, it is a fascinating time to be alive. And I think a really important thing to consider when talking about all this too is, there's been a lot of scratching our head looking back, how were we so ignorant? And I'm sure even 100 years from now, they'll look back at a lot of the things now and the political system and all, and wow, that was crazy, they did. And, when you look at the journey of the soul and the hero's journey, I believe we're all on and meant to go on, and that we signed up for, in the non-physical, my personal perspective, is that's a necessary part of it. For you to be the hero, there's got to be something to overcome. And so I think, a lot of people get so lost in the weeds with what's wrong and how bad it is, and not seeing that, once again, alchemizing it into, and that's where all the opportunity is. I mean, speaking of even, applying this to the idea of wealth, how many people, when things are really screwed up, that's when they see opportunity. Someone else is like, oh my gosh, the markets are falling apart, and someone else sees, oh, this is where all the opportunity lies. Yeah. And
I think what you were touching on too is one way to look at things is we chose to come into form during this time because wow, what an exciting time it is to be alive. We can travel anywhere, and look, historically people were able to travel without leaving anywhere and go to different civilizations. But let's just talk about more in the matter world, the material world, that you can get on a plane and go anywhere, where 100 years ago you couldn't do that, right? You would have had to been uber wealthy.
Yep.
You know, you can have a car chauffeur you where you want to go to your friend's house, right? You know, 20 years ago you would have had to been uber wealthy to do that, right? Now you just can do an Uber. And, you know, the abilities to read books on the internet for free, mass content. So it is a brilliant and beautiful time to be alive if we choose to look at it. And then what are we doing with that information? And what is this kind of new architecture? You know, how do we want to treat ourselves? How do we want to treat others? How do we want to build community? You know, so it's a crazy time and a hectic time, but also a beautiful time. And I think that's where there's this beautiful mess, right? Like no mud, no lotus. And if we can, the alchemy of seeing that, yeah, there is dark and light, but how can we come into connection with the darkness and use that as a way to illuminate more light?
Yeah, absolutely. You've never seen a great work of art without shadow in it.
Exactly. Yeah. Do you know actually the history of Christian mysticism?
Yeah, a little. I mean, I wouldn't say I went deep dive, but yeah.
So like a mystic in Christian terms was one that could determine the voice of God from the devil, that was able to distinguish the two. So I look at that in terms of a metaphor for our own lives and say, how can we distinguish the voice of love over fear, right? And like I was just hiking in Joshua Tree, and there was this couple, and they were a little ahead of me on a trail, and it was a 2-mile trail, and they were up ahead, and they said, they were looking a little confused. I'm like, are we on the trail? And I said, and I wasn't even thinking, I was just flowing. And I said, yeah. They said, well, I don't know. Is it? I said, yeah, just, flow. And I said, well, we think it could be either, there's another trail, it could be 20 miles, and this could be 2 miles. So we don't want to make the mistake. And I didn't even know that a 20-mile trail existed. I was just flowing, and I was certain that I was going to be on the path. Yeah. And whatever path I needed to be on, right? If I needed to go on that 20-mile journey, I would have gone on it. And I just went forward, and I said, I'm going forward. And they went back, and they missed out. And I looped around, and then I later saw them, and I was like, hey, by the way, that trail was the trail. But there was fear within them, right? And like that fear came in where it's like, oh, like, should I trust myself? Do I know where I'm going? What if we get stuck on the 20-mile trail? And that fear is debilitating, right? And that fear is what I think holds us back so much in life. And that ability to either just be in flow and trust that flow and not be so worried about all these things that might never happen, right? Like, if they had just followed me, like they wouldn't have got lost on a 20-mile trail, but they were so worried that they could have. That it limited their experience.
And even attracted the experience. Giving energy to, that idea, I would argue, is like calling it in.
Yeah, exactly. And it can be paralyzing, and who's to say that maybe that's not the journey they needed to go on?
Well, obviously. And it's arguable that, absolutely it was. And
maybe they needed to be saved by somebody, mile 10 or something.
Right. Exactly. And it's funny because I literally was sitting here and I thought to myself, okay, I want to dive into, obviously you went from a very, sort of normal idea of success in business, etc., to traveling and backpacking and much more, they're so, different. How did flow actually play into that? And I'm sitting here thinking, I'm going to ask him about flow next. And then next thing I know, you flow right into talking about flow. So it's a great example of, flowing.
I think trusting your intuitive guide, your intuitive guidance system. And that's scary, right? Because we want to think life is predictable, or we want to, think, that there's a right way, or we're attached to this idea of like, right, like, but I was supposed to go to this party, and right, like now what if the party's canceled? And you're attached and rigid, and there's no flow. Right? You can't flow. And I have some of my greatest moments in life where I think, like I actually, with Halloween, I got dressed up and it was, these COVID times and I was so excited to go out and I felt so lit up. And my friend sent me this party and it was actually a daytime party and I showed up at like 6:00 and the party was canceled. And I was like, there's no party. Okay, well, the universe is presenting something new to me. I didn't know that. If I just showed up, and I felt called to go somewhere, but the thing that I thought was going to be there wasn't there. So I just went somewhere else. And I sat at a restaurant actually by myself. I started meditating in a really cool shamanic outfit. And like this guy walked over to me. He's like, hey, would you like to join our table? And I met 12 amazing people. Wow. And then the next table, I was lighting incense and they were like, we love the smell of the incense. Would you come over and like bless our table? So I met like 20 new people, cool. In this flow state, right? So love that story. We have to get rid of our rigidity, our attachment, and sometimes being structured is good.
There's a time and place. Yeah.
If you're too flowy, but sometimes it's good to have that structure. So I think, back then, I was living in a more linear world, which was about accomplishment and achievement and merit. And, I wanted to go and hunt, right? I wanted to bring back the kill.
Yep.
And I did that. And then I wanted to go out and explore and amass experience and wisdom and different outlooks on life and stories and, myth. And that was what was turning me on. So, it was really, in a way, you could look at the similarity over the difference and say, I was just attracted to success and money in my 20s and my 30s, experience, wisdom, and knowledge. Mm-hmm. And so I was just, without truly knowing it, just trust, forget about even trusting, like following the world of spirit threw me into it. Yeah. It wasn't easy. I mean, it was actually at times really challenging, depressing, soul crushing, because I'm like, holy shit, like everyone else in the world is identifying with like, what do you do and who you are? And, that's like one of the first questions people ask you. It's like, well, what do you do in the world, right? And then I would think, well, what do they want to really know? Like, they want to know like who I am and how I show up in the world, because I do a lot of things, right? Like I could be mentoring someone or coaching someone or listening to someone or loving someone or giving them business advice or cooking for them or going on an adventure and experience and being free and lighting up the world in the moment, so many things, right? I could be appreciating someone's art and purchasing something as a form of gratitude. And who knows, that $20 maybe was the money that they fed their family with for a month. So we don't know the blessing. And I think just trusting that, like, when I was in Bali, I remember I was on a motorcycle I rented, and I remember having this moment where I had this like letter visually come in, and because I was like 5 years traveling, and my dad was like, what do you kind of not like, but he was supportive, but he's like kind of like, what are you doing with your life? Yeah. And I was like, what am I doing with my life? And I had this letter come in. It was from like the Department of Human Interiors, and it was like, you are a cultural ambassador of love, and your assignment is to continue to do what you're doing and trust that. And this is like coming from like the Department of Human Interiors, so you can have a deeper knowledge and understanding of like what is happening at an interior level of individuals and of the world. And so I thought, wow, okay, I just got to trust that. And it was like, literally I saw like a check. It was like, you're like writing yourself a check, like you are funding your journey. Mm-hmm. You are using the money that you received from this previous chapter to fund this journey, to learn these things that will later be shared. And so, here we get to share. Yeah.
Cool. Yeah, that's it's just beautiful, man, when you learn to trust, like you've touched on, and just trust the mystery of, reality and your experience, and always have that childlike wonder where you're, approaching it in that way. Like, oh, okay, well, this is, I'm really curious. I'm really, I want to learn from this. I want to find more. And it seems like you've definitely been that guy. What is next for you? Like, what is it? How we're obviously sharing it right here and now. I mean, do you have anything that really lights you up that you're excited? I know we're both, I'm just finishing a book, and I know you're working on one or about to start one.
Yeah. So writing, speaking, filming, I'm really, as I said, I feel connected to wisdom of earth keepers, indigenous cultures, sharing some of their information and knowledge about how we can really see the world that maybe is less visible to us, but innately is there, right? Like the unseen, like how to make the unseen more seen, so that we do feel this deeper sense of connection and mystery and synchronicity in our lives, and we start to trust more. So filming, speaking, writing, and nature, creating, turning people on more to nature. I also do have a project working with indigenous cultures right now called the Base Project, where I'm supporting African artisans who've been affected by the global shutdown of the pandemic.
Wow.
And a lot of people, there's so many obviously industries that, bartenders and people in nightclubs and restaurants, that are close to home for us. But I think what we fail to realize sometimes is people want to go on a safari and they say, well, but I want to help, people in these countries, right? Or they want to go to Mexico and you want to buy a textile, which is amazing. But what happens, we're so interconnected, right? This is just one example of our interconnected nature, that when tourism shuts down and we live in this capital-based economy that requires someone to go somewhere physically and buy something from someone so that they can maintain their livelihood because their community and their country is relying on a capitalistic nature of transaction. And then when one thing, it's the domino effect, right? When you can't go to Africa and buy that, piece of craft from the guy on the side of the road, well, how does he feed his family? And,
right.
That's a larger story. So I've been working with these groups of artisans in Africa and Namibia, and, distributing baskets and jewelry. I brought you a piece I'll share with you in a moment.
Oh, cool.
And so that's a small project of socially good commerce called the Base Project that I'm excited about sharing with people, over the holidays.
Cool, man. That's super exciting. Yeah, I just want to throw it out now because I don't want to forget. Samara Penn, who was a good friend who actually lives here at the Mystic Manor, was on the show recently for the first time. He's about to go to South America for several months, filming and documenting.
Ooh.
All sounds like you guys are pretty closely aligned. So I'd love to introduce you. He's like a room over from where we're sitting right now. So
it's interesting because I think that there is this period of time, like with Native American cultures, where there's this really deep wisdom and this way of life, and we're in this transitionary time, and there's struggle and suffering that goes on there as well, because a lot of those cultures weren't used to having to pay for things, right? It was like you grew food and you shared, and that's what I love about nature, right? Is like you can grow one thing and tend to one thing, and then someone else grows something and you appreciate it, and there's a sharing. And that is the currency, right? Where you were talking about at an energetic level, it's just is it being distributed in the most efficient way? And you look at even like mushrooms, mycelium, they're distributing, right, the resources, the energy in the most efficient way possible, and trees do that as well. And so the question is like, are humans doing that, right? Or are we hoarding, right? Is there, one guy with 20 homes, but then look in LA, I was in downtown yesterday, and there's this huge it's scary about these people in the streets and they're homeless.
So many.
And addiction, and I've struggled with addiction as well, with weed, and I see people on the street and I'm like, wow, we need to get them clean. We need to let them know that they matter, that they are here for a reason, that their soul matters. But how do we have these people that have so much and these people that have so little? And that's where I always source from, these indigenous cultures who don't have these concepts of, you don't have a home? Well, why do I have 10 homes and Jimmy has 0?
It makes no sense.
Let's build him a home.
Yeah. Right.
So there's a lot of work for us all to do.
Yeah, there is a lot of work we get to do. Right?
Exactly.
And
we all play a part. And I think that's the beautiful tapestry, that when we come together like this, we make magic. We need each other. We all play a role.
Are each other's medicine.
I don't have all the answers. You don't have all the answers, but we all can give a little and receive a lot.
Yep. I look at it as we're like this giant puzzle putting itself back together. And it's like, I've got this piece. What piece you got? And it's just, and it's a game. It's fun to figure it out. And that's
the collective alchemy, right? That we all get to see, like, everybody has a gift. And
everyone out there listening, like, and not just us on this side of the
What
microphone.
is your gift? Like, what's going to really, what turns you on and what makes you alive? And can you feed that every day like a tree? Look at a lot of trees take 7-8 years to bear fruits, but through constant watering and nurturing and attention. And we live in this world, like I was in it, right? And I think it's even heightened what I saw with, the .com, that people, I want to have the next Twitter, and in a year I want to have $1 billion industry, right? Yeah. And what happened to patience and nurturing, right? So if you're out there and you're feeling discouraged, life is a journey. You are exactly where you need to be. Be present to that, be aware of that, and say, what can I feed today? What can I nurture today and tomorrow and the next day? And if you don't have the answers and you don't know what's turning you on, be in the discovery stage. Allow yourself to be in that discovery stage.
Yeah, that's so important. I think it's the most fundamental thing for someone who doesn't know exactly what their next move is, or transitioning out of that career that no longer aligns with them. I don't know where I'm going next. It's like when you can learn to move into that state of trust and faith and knowing that you are as valuable as any soul ever has been, could be, will be. You are it. It is you. And it's not if, but when that emerges when you approach it from this perspective of, okay, I trust. I'm here. St. Francis of Assisi said, Lord, make me an instrument of thy peace. I'm here to serve. And, Gandhi said, if you want to find yourself, lose yourself in the service of others. I always like to say that's true because there are no others. And when you align with that whole, conceptualization, it's like you can just relax about the timing and the knowing, and it's really just about your number one job is managing your vibration.
Yeah, I love that. And I think the grass is always greener. Sometimes people hate, they don't like their job, but be grateful you have a paycheck. Be grateful that you have a place to go and that you can, be of value in some way, even if it's not the final design or the final, desire. But I think there is a level of deep gratitude, that people can say, wow, I'm so grateful I have a roof over my head. I'm so grateful I can, buy food. I can go to a restaurant and then, operate from there. But if you're not grateful for what you have,
it's the doorway.
Then
it's the doorway to what's next.
What makes you think you're going to be grateful for having more stuff?
You probably won't be.
Exactly.
and I love the alchemizing the credit card bill. That's a really good one. It's like,
and gratitude and I think just approaching life every day as a blessing and waking up and say, what does the universe have to show me and what can I offer the universe today? And trusting that, if we're lit up, like I have this parable, Martin Luther King used to say, like, if you're a street sweeper, be the best street sweeper in the world. And I love that. And I use a metaphor of like $1 million waiter, that I had a restaurant and like these waiters always complain like, oh, like I didn't get a good tip or these people. And so like, you're in service. You're in the service industry. What if you placed yourself in those people's shoes and said, wait a minute.
Everyone should wait tables at some point.
What if this is like the one night of the month that this family has a babysitter and they can go out? Like, how can I make this the most special moment of them? And if you operated from that place, then like let yourself be surprised. And so I think that, we have this like high expectation of life, but like, what are we feeding life with? And what are we giving to life? And can we be in service? Like, do we have compassion for others? Like, can we really be in that space of like, I want to make your experience amazing. Like, I want to be in total support of you without expecting to get something in return. Yeah. That's kind of what you were talking about. Yep. Let life surprise you through that.
Yeah. You made me think of a great guest. He's been on 3 times over the years. This guy, Derek Rydall. Do you know who he is?
Yeah. I worked with a similar coach.
Okay, yeah. So if you guys go to positivehead.com, you can search Rydall, and he's got a great story. I forget which one of the episodes where he talks about his journey as a waiter, actually.
Right.
And, he went from being, I think he's an actor, and then he kind of had a rough patch, and he needed to create, revenue from a new source. And next thing he knows, he's serving the people that used to be his peers and colleagues, and he's like humiliated at first, but then he alchemizes and shifts his perspective to like, okay, if I'm going to be the waiter, I'm going to be the best waiter there's
how can
ever
you give
been.
The best experience possible. And I think that's a great place. My friend Gabby Bernstein had a really interesting quote that she said, like her boyfriend at the time was working in an industry he didn't like. And she's like, just be the light, right? So like, can you be lit up? Can you support others? Can you see other people's gifts and be in service to the space? Like what is needed in the environment where you're in now?
Yeah.
Can you give love? Can you give light in that environment and not judge it as like, oh, this is not a spiritual place. Everything's spiritual.
Everything.
So even if you are a stockbroker, it's like, right? Like, how can you be compassionate? How can you be supportive? How can you listen, truly listen? And, and that, because that's wherever you are, you need to be there right now. So trusting that,
Knowing, exactly. You're always a master, I believe, is someone who embraces whatever shows up, whatever's in front of them, because they know it's exactly what they need to step into the next greatest and greatest version of themselves. It's as perfect, source, higher self, God, whatever you're going to call it, is perfect. The universe, it's always giving everyone the medicine they need all the time, all the time, all the time.
And there's always there's the illusion of something else, right?
Yeah, right.
That something else is better. And then we're either nexting or we're outside of the present moment. We're not sourcing from that present and saying, this is divine, I'm divine, everything around me is divine. It's, judging or, if I go here, it's more spiritual. I mean, I lived in spiritual communities and it's not. That's the illusion that, and I think that's where in this modern day of Instagram and of influencers and whatever you want to call them, and teachers, that we give up our power so easily. We think, someone else knows more than I do. And then you go to them. And I'm not saying that people don't have true knowledge and information, but that there's this dance and this balance of giving away your power.
Yep.
Right. And then you say, I'm going to go on this retreat because it's going to make me, find God.
He's the guru.
Yeah. And then you realize, that guy's just trying to pay his bills too.
Yeah.
And he's suffering the same way you are. So it's like when I was in Peru, I had this really great moment where I went in this store and I was studying Icaros, which are this ancient healing code in the Peruvian Amazon that they use with ayahuasca, and their songs, and it's a healing language. And so I was like, I really want to learn what the meaning of all these are. So I started asking the shopkeeper. He had this really cool story. He was barefoot, had all these big like snake like statues and moats, and it was a wild spot. And I was like, what does this one mean? What does this one mean? I was so hungry to like find something outside of myself, right? Like, and he's like, that one's gratitude, that one's that. And then he's like, he hands me a card, and it's like, over the years, there's always been one thing that, the ancient sages have known, and now it's time for us to reconnect. Everything's inside of you, everything you're looking for. And I think that's where we need to really harness that we have the power, we have the capacity, we have the ability, and to really like connect internally and be like, I could do this, nothing is going to be given to me that is outside of my ability to function. Like I can handle anything, and
you're always, I think that's I think back even to my grandmother had a little cross stitching or something on her wall when I was a little boy. And I remember it was something like, God didn't promise you an easy life or something. He promised that he would never give you more than you could handle.
Yeah. Yeah. There's a great reggae song I love, which is Jah never gives a man more than he can bear.
Yeah. Right.
Or man and woman.
Right.
Yeah. And so, I mean, in a way, life is a form of struggle, right? And suffering. Buddhists say life is suffering, and we have to find joy and meaning through that suffering. And so there's this great story. I love the story, The Tale of Two Wolves. And it's an old Cherokee is teaching his grandson about life. And the boy says, a fight is going on inside of me. And it's a terrible fight, and it's between two wolves. One is evil. He has anger, envy, sorrow, regret, greed, arrogance, self-pity, guilt, resentment, inferiority, lies, false pride, superiority, and ego. He continued. The other is good. He has joy, peace, love, hope, serenity, humility, kindness, benevolence, empathy, generosity, truth, compassion, and faith. The same fight is going on inside of you and is inside every other person too. The grandson thought about it for a minute and then asked his grandfather, which wolf will win? The old Cherokee simply replied, "The one you feed."
Such a good story. I haven't heard that one in a while, and it's just like, it's so true.
And, you know, we have in every moment that choice, right, to feed that love or that fear. And I think the other angle to that, which you touched on earlier, is like, we can't get rid of fear. Fear is going to exist, but we can use fear as actually a source and a teacher.
Yep.
And we can say, I'm really scared shitless in this moment, but I'm not going to succumb to it. I'm going to rise above it.
Yep.
And so, you know, we talk a lot about being fearless, and I mean, that's cool to use as modern adage language, but it's not really acknowledging
realistic.
That, you know what, everybody's scared shitless, and the people like get up on stage, do the thing, you know, perform it, put it out there, and, you know, use your fear actually as medicine. You know?
Yeah. I love when I had Matt Kahn here when we filmed his episode Optimistic. He said, "Bleed on stage."
I love that.
It's so true. It's like, or FEAR, the acronym. I don't know if
false
you ever
evidence appearing real.
Yeah, or that one, and or I even like more than that one is it can be one. It's like the two wolves. FEAR, forget everything and run, or face everything and rise.
Oh,
Like
I love that.
You just said
I
rise.
love that. Yeah, I love that. That's great.
So, yeah, well, man, this has gone quickly. There are a couple things I do want to touch on as we sort of wind down. One is, you know, it's so key, and it's one I've been writing about. It's, you know, a big piece in my book as well as intention. And I'd love to hear, what are your thoughts on intentions?
Yeah, you know, it's such a word that's kind of thrown around a lot in spiritual communities, but I think it's so important. Like, what is our intention behind our work? You know, what are we really looking to do? Who are we looking to influence? What's the impact we're looking to make? What's the intention behind it? And, you know, for some people, maybe their intention is to make money so they can provide for their family. And there's nothing wrong with that.
Sure.
But maybe their intention within that is to provide the best customer service or the best experience or to bring love and joy to someone's life. And I think intention is really important. And sometimes when things fail, it's either that we weren't really clear with our intention, right? Or maybe that we were clear with our intention, but then we got blinded by this other thing. Like I had a friend of mine who did this beautiful piece of art, and he didn't really create an intention to make money around it or focus his intention around that. And he created this beautiful work, but then he's like judging it like, oh, but it wasn't successful because it did it. But what was the intention? You know? Yeah. So I think what, as we start things, right? Like, what is our why? What is our intention?
Right.
What is our reason for doing it? Like, why do we want to create this thing in the first place? And always going back to our intention within our business. Like, if we feel misaligned or if we need a check-in, like, what is the intention behind this business? Yeah. Why does it exist? You know? And that should be like the cornerstone. That should be the guiding post and the guiding light.
I love what you're saying, and it's something that I go deep with, like I said in the book. And it's, I believe in the past, one of the things I talk about in the book is, in the past, I believe we were in a different world. First of all, obviously it's changing all the time. And I believe mankind has been on this journey of separation from source for, as far as we recorded history, at least, and beyond. And these, like the Mayans even talked about these cycles, right, of, sort of coming back to source, all coming, unifying. And then this is what I think the dance source is participating in throughout eternity. Is like separation, unification, unification, the breathing in and out of God, right? And even if you look at the cosmos, it's like symbolically there, like, oh, they think we're expanding outward, right. And at some point we could collapse back upon itself, or I saw recently the other day, it was a really cool quote, and it was basically saying, look, perhaps it's not so much as expanding out infinitely like we think, it just keeps going. This is just one long breath that, we're in a cycle of a billion-year breath, and it's still going, and then at some point it starts, and that's another way to look at it. And so when you start thinking in this term, like, okay, what is your intention? In the past, it was like, it served the Rockefellers to be so focused on money 100 years ago or whatever, or go back 1,000 years ago. And some of those techniques might have worked, an intention of, in a separation mentality, a separation world, hey, it's all about me, and that's the times we're in, and that's the medicine that mankind needs. As we enter into the new world, I think the more your intention is, out of alignment with the betterment of everyone and everything, you're going to find a harder and harder time to, find what appears to be success.
And the separation is an illusion, right? That even during those times, a lot of famously people would say, who is the true slave and who is the true master?
Right.
The one that has the knowledge, right?
Yep.
That does, if you don't feel like a slave, and they're suffering with the uber wealth. So that separation is the illusion. And I think, one of the things that I love from this tribe that I mentioned earlier in Burkina Faso, the Dagara, they talk about, why would we build buildings and create technology that would get in the way of us and spirit? Mm-hmm. That is interference, mm-hmm. right? So we have this idea that, we build a really big skyscraper and build these super whatever, and AI but that interferes with our antennas, our spiritual connection, mm-hmm. and our ability for synchronicity. Like I was actually going to share with you this morning when I came a little early, and I remember, years ago when my dad was still here in physical form, he was like, "What time's your meeting?" I said 10. It was 9. He said, "Well, why are you leaving so early?" It's like, "Well, I want to make room for magic."
I love it.
And so I showed up here a bit early, and I was standing on the street, and a friend of mine who had moved to Mount Shasta, I was thinking about yesterday, I was going to reach out to him on my phone, right? Mm-hmm. Reach out. Mm-hmm. So this is the humor of it all. Like, what does reaching out actually mean? At an energetic level,
right?
Are we not reaching out? Can we not
every time
send and transmit love and vibration? And so I'm literally standing on the street with an e-bike that I rented, and I hear Doug, and I turn around, and it's my friend Rico, and he's literally on this street, and I showed up 20 minutes early, and I just was standing on the street. I had no knowledge of what was going to happen, but I'm just trusting that I'm guided here early, right? But my head, or we have a phone and we think that's superior, but is this technology that is baked within us not the most purest, advanced, superior thing? Yeah. And so, it's good for us to take inventory, right, of our thoughts, like having peaceful, loving thoughts and being in a peaceful, loving vibration and alchemizing and harmonizing our body, mm-hmm. so that we are lit up and we're not weighed down by the past, by negative thoughts, that we can be in that pure vibration. And let's see what comes to us as a result of that, frequency.
I love that story and I love that share. And I love the fact that you just shared a synchronicity like that happened en route as part of this interview itself. Like, so cool. I mean, to talk about someone being in the flow, like it's so cool. And I think it becomes really fun too when you start to say, hold on, why am I having this impetus to go to this place, that I normally wouldn't, or go early, or just take a different route on the ride home, or whatever. You start like cueing in more to these little subtle energies, and then you say, okay, maybe there's something there for me. Well, let's do it. Let's make it a game. And now you've all of a sudden invited in, my favorite Bible quote. They know what's coming because I don't quote the Bible much, but when I do, it's lest you become like a child, you can't enter the kingdom of heaven. And so unless you become like the lest you become like a child, you can't enter the kingdom of heaven. Beautiful. And getting in that childlike state of, okay, I may be commuting again to the same old place, but I'm going to go 20 minutes early and take a different route and invite something magical into my world, like you said. I love the way you put it to your father.
Because to be a child is to be in a state of wonder.
That's right.
And if we are in a state of wonder, we're in a state of curiosity and possibility. And if we're in a state of knowing everything, that's very draining. And, if we're so structured that nothing new can come in, well, what do you do when you're, 40, 50, 60, 70? Life kind of sucks if you can't enter this state of wonder.
Yep.
Yeah.
Wow, this has been absolutely amazing. Doug, you're such an inspiration, my friend. For those who want to connect and, follow you, follow your journey, how can they do that?
Yeah, so Instagram's the best. IAM DOUGAKIN. I am Doug Akin would probably be the best way.
Cool.
And if you want to check out the Base Project and see some of the artisan-made goods from Africa, we have an Instagram handle at the Base Project.
Cool. I'm sure you'll have some people reach out thanking you, wanting to connect and all that jazz. Because
and I post a lot of, from the last 10 years, actually, it's been the easiest way to chronicle a lot of the adventures and look back on life. So, I post a lot of stories on Instagram.
Cool. And you're here locally?
Yeah, I'm in Venice. Yeah.
I'm so glad. And I'm so grateful that Mark connected us because it's,
Yes, I'm very
You'll have to swing back through. And we were talking a little bit. We took a bathroom break, unbeknownst to you guys. Thank you, Sarah, for editing it out. And we were talking about, Doug mentioned, do you ever do call-ins? And I was like, I used to do that sort of thing a long time ago, and it's been a minute, and I'd love to actually do. I've thought about it here and there, doing it again sometime. So who knows? Maybe Doug will swing back by on his e-bike early, of course, to make time for magic, and we'll mix it up a little bit, and connect with some of you guys out there.
Awesome. Thanks for tuning in, everyone. Sending so much love to you all.
Yes. Thank you guys so much once again for tuning in. And if you haven't yet, don't forget to go to goldenkey.gift and register to get a free copy of my first book I'm super excited about. I got one final question for you before we go, Doug. In 60 seconds or less, what is the meaning of life according to Doug Akin?
The meaning of life is to experience life in its full potency and vibrancy, to just be a witness, an observer, and an active co-creator and participant in this magical tapestry of being.
And so it is. And otherwise, until next time, everyone, journey well. Love you all so, so much. Also, before we sign off, I wanted to remind you about the game with the universe on our website. You can choose the first number that comes to your mind, and it'll pull up that episode number of the podcast. I've been saying this is a great way to co-create synchronicity and magic with your higher self for quite some time. And if you go to positivehead.com/universe, there is a super fun and simple interface to play this game with your higher self. I firmly believe just by setting the intention to play in this way, it opens up the door for magic, and it's a synchronistic way to hone in on nuggets of wisdom out of the huge catalog of episodes that are specifically appropriate for you at this time in your journey to becoming the next greatest and greatest version of yourself. And it also makes for a super fun way to spark the curiosity of friends and family by having them choose a number, so they'll hopefully go and check out their number as well, which I greatly appreciate because it helps us to spread the word about the podcast. Once again, the address is positivehead.com/universe. And as a quick reminder, if you're curious to learn more about Purium superfoods and why I take them almost every day, be sure to also check out positivehead.com/transformation. On this journey of becoming the next greatest and grandest version of ourselves that we have all embarked upon, I cannot stress the importance of managing your physical vibration enough. And quite honestly, Purium has put together the simplest plan I've found to do so. I have my favorite, the appleberry shake, at least 5 times a week. Once again, to learn more about the Purium transformation, go to positivehead.com/transformation. Or if you want to keep it simple and just try out my favorite, the appleberry shake, you can go straight over to ishoppurium.com and be sure to use code positivehead for 25% off. I'll spell that for you. It's ishoppurium.com. And be sure to use your Positive Head 25% coupon code.